What's up and how is everyone doing today? In today's video, we're going to be finding out the real differences between Ragnarok in God of War and Norse mythology, because there's a lot. Not saying that Sony Santa Monica should be burnt at the stake for getting a few things wrong and not getting everything down to a T. It's not like that's ever happened in history before. But just showing the comparisons between the old mythology of the Germanic and Scandinavian people and their gods, such as Odin and Thor, as well as creatures as Jormungandr and Nidhogg, and how they compare to the story of God of War. And just a fair warning for all of you, there are some serious spoilers ahead for God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok, so if you haven't played these titles yet, what in the hell are you doing with your life? But seriously, go check them out, they are more worth a playthrough each. Or 8, or 10, or way too many. So, to take a dive into Ragnarok, we have to check out some of the Old Norse sources, particularly from the book The Poetic Edda, and more specifically the poem Voluspa, which gives us the oldest and most accurate tale of Ragnarok. There will be some extra details and different stories, poems, or whatever it might be in this, but this is going to be the main story we are going to take a look at. But our story begins today with the death of Balder. And I'm really not going to go into a huge amount of detail about Balder's death because I'm saving that for a later video. So in Norse mythology, Balder was, how'd that go, my man?
Balder is blessed with invulnerability to all threats, physical or magical.
Thank you, buddy. And this was completely correct. He had no vulnerabilities whatsoever, all except mistletoe. So, Loki is kind of the only guy who doesn't really like Balder. Literally everyone likes Balder, except Loki. So he had his brother, well, Balder's brother, Hodder, the blind god, throw a mistletoe arrow at him one day and kills Balder. Some sources say it was a mistletoe spear instead. Either way, Balder is dead, and Fimbulwinter has begun, which is a winter that spans 3 years with no summers or breaks in between. Now is the start of Ragnarok, the end of the Norse gods, and there are a ton of details and events that happen during this final battle. Now the events of Ragnarok happen just like so, and cue the dramatic music. 3 roosters located in Asgard, the realm of the Aesir. Jotunheim, the realm of the giants, which is an awful translation, is more closely related to the word devourer. And Hel, the realm of the dead. Yes, not Helheim, Hel. And they could be heard throughout the realms, indicating Ragnarok has begun. The army of the dead from Hel, led by Loki riding in boats made from nails. Many scholars believe that this is human nails, but I've heard mentions of regular nails that you use on wood as well. From the depths of the roots of the world tree Yggdrasil flies Nidhogg, the serpent who also carries more soldiers of the dead. An army of Jotun, both frost and fire, start their march towards the gates of Asgard. Among them, the fire Jotun Surt, the bringer of destruction and fire. Mani and Sol, the gods that pull the moon and the sun across the sky, have been chased by the giant wolves Skull and Hati for ages. Until this day, when they both will be caught and swallowed by these beasts, blackening the sky. When the army of the dead and the Jotun reach the gates of Asgard, Heimdall will blow his Gjallarhorn to signal the final battle has begun. And try as they might, many of the Aesir will not see the end of the great battle. Thor, the thunder god, will face off against his most fierce rival Jormungandr, the world's serpent. And when Thor lands the killing blow on the great snake, Jormungandr will fill the air with its venom, heavily affecting Thor. He will walk exactly 9 steps and fall to the ground, dead. Odin, the All-Father and leader of the Aesir gods, will fight against the mightiest of wolves, Fenrir, after Fenrir escapes from his chains that Odin and the other gods put him in. Odin, try as he might, cannot withstand the power of Fenrir and is devoured by the wolf. Vengeance will be taken on the All-Father's side as Vidar, the god of vengeance, will slay the great wolf with the help of his magical boot. The god of war Tyr will fight the wolf of hell Garm, both with their vendettas. Tyr lost a hand in the binding of Fenrir the great wolf, and Garm being chained in the realm of hell. They both probably don't like each other very much. They will kill each other before the final battle is over. Heimdall will end up facing Loki during Ragnarok, and they too will kill each other, both suffering mortal wounds. Freyr, Lord of Alfheim, will fight the fire Jotun Surt. Freyr at this time is without his magical sword that can fight by itself, but will still force his will against the great fire Jotun. They both succeed, killing each other, but not before Surt burns the entire world to ash with the swing of his mighty sword. After the great battle has subsided, many of the gods have perished along with many of the other beings of the realms, but some do survive. Balder, back from his stay in Hell after his death, is one of them. Magni and Modi, the sons of Thor, are also among Balder and the other survivors. And with help from one another, they will build a new world. Okay, damn. There's a lot of stuff that goes down during Ragnarok in the Norse sagas, but what are the differences between the Norse old sagas of Ragnarok and the story that Sony Santa Monica tells in God of War? Okay, starting off, Ragnarok kind of takes a whole new meaning when it comes to God of War. Ragnarok is not exactly a battle. I mean, it kinda is, but it is mainly a whole different being altogether. Ragnarok is another form of Surt the Brave, right after Kratos plunged the Blades of Chaos into the heart of Samara. This is where the transformation from Surt to Ragnarok happens, right at the spark of the world Ginnungagap, which leads to the destruction of many gods and races from around the realms. Friend or foe, it doesn't matter to Ragnarok. Which, if you ask me, kind of lines up with myth a little bit. Well, at least Surt in myth, setting the world ablaze and killing basically everything around it, kind of adds up a little bit right there. But all in all, I really still did like Sony Santa Monica's take on Surt and Ragnarok. For some reason, I just wish it wasn't called Ragnarok. I don't know, call it big ass fire. I don't know. But once again, I really did like it, and it kind of reminds me of the Greek sagas of God of War with the big giant ass monsters. I kind of like that part about it. Okay, who the hell is next? There's so much going on. Right. The armies of Hell led by Loki. Well, this kind of happens in God of War. Well, obviously Hel wasn't really given much of a role in God of War, and she's only really mentioned a couple of times in the sagas, but mainly in the death of Balder. And in God of War, Hreysvelgr is the one that's kind of overseeing Hel at the time, which kind of blows my mind, because Hreysvelgr is supposed to live at the top of the Yggdrasil, the world tree, and not at the bottom, so I don't know what's going on. Personally, I think it's kind of a weird choice, but whatever. It was actually Hildisvíni, and with the help of Mimir, that actually recruited the Army of the Dead and helped with getting the races together to take out the Aesir. But it was Kratos who actually led the armies against the Aesir and not Loki or aka Atreus. Even though he did play a pretty monumental role during Ragnarok, trapping Odin's soul and everything, but did he lead them? No. Also, Nidhogg kind of had her head cut off by Kratos and Freya before the Battle of Ragnarok, and now all her little bastard children are running around the realms. Little pains in the ass. Next up, Skoll and Hati. So Skoll and Hati were kind of penned up in the kennels of Asgard by Odin when they were just puppies. But one day, Mani and Sol, the two gods pulling the sun and the moon, became mutinous and kind of stood still in the sky. So Odin took Skoll and Hati, used his Vanir magic, and cast him to the heavens, aka the sky, to start their chase after them. And Mimir tells us this is why.
But Ragnarok is supposed to be Odin's doom, isn't it? Why would he set the wolves loose if it fulfills the prophecy?
Precisely the question, lad. It's always about control. The wolves determine when Ragnarok begins, and now he controls the wolves. A battle fought on his timetable is a battle he better stands to win.
Obviously, this did not happen in myth, but I do kind of like Sony Santa Monica's pull on this Old Norse saga. But once again, Skoll and Hati did not chase the sun and moon forever. A group of Jotuns actually pulled them from their Vanir spell in the sky so they can actually get away from Odin's control, and they hid in Vanaheim. and while hiding in Vanaheim, they gave up their chase of the sun and the moon because the moon itself was captured. Kratos and Atreus eventually find the captured moon and release it back into the sky. And with Atreus, a little help from one of his arrows, set Skull and Hati back in their chase across the sky for the sun and the moon. And during the Battle of Ragnarok, the player can actually see Skull and Hati doing some damage of their own. But to my knowledge, this is the last part in the game that we actually see Skull and Hati. Now, Skull and Hati do play a little bit bigger of a role in God of War versus Mythology, but I really don't mind that. They didn't do too much with them, but they didn't do too little as well. I kind of like their spin. I like it. Alright, who is next? Galahorn and Heimdall. So Heimdall is an ass, more or less. He doesn't take too kindly to Atreus scaling the walls of Asgard, his brother Thor making sure that Heimdall doesn't kill Atreus, and continually insults Atreus, Thor, especially when they're on their mission in Helheim with Thor's daughter Thrud. A serious superiority complex on this guy. Well, things go really south for Heimdall, especially when Kratos and Freya go into Asgard to find Freyr. The team on their mission is actually intercepted by Heimdall, and Kratos tries his best not to fight him, but Heimdall isn't having any of it. Heimdall is on his beast Gulltrapper, which he really did have in Mythology, but in Mythology, it was a horse, not this giant lion horned thing. Honestly, I kind of like it better though. Here the fight begins, and Kratos gives Heimdall so many chances to just walk away, but Heimdall, in his complete arrogance, keeps fighting. And Kratos eventually kills Heimdall, which I am not going to be in the majority of this one. That was probably my favorite boss fight in the entire game of God of War Ragnarok. I know this is a pretty uncommon pick for favorite boss fight in God of War Ragnarok because there are metric ton. But something about this fight I just loved. I loved it. Anyway, Heimdall dies and Kratos comes into possession of Galahorn. So obviously this did not happen in Mythology, and Heimdall was supposed to fight Loki and kill each other as well. He was also supposed to blow the horn Galahorn to signify that Ragnarok has begun. But in God of War, this is not the case. Kratos is the one to kill Heimdall, and he is also the one to blow Galahorn, which opens all of the gates from around the realms to the gates of Asgard, so they can all begin Ragnarok together. Different from Mythology, but I love that fight, so yeah, I'm cool with it. The next god we're going to talk about is Thor and his battle against Jormungandr, which did not come out the way I theorized. Now, Thor is one of the big bads of God of War Ragnarok, and probably one of the most anticipated characters that we know of before the game came out. And who could blame any of them, because Brian Hertz is also voicing Thor, which kinda getting a little off topic, but Brian Hertz is awesome. So Thor is a fractured god, a fractured man even, working on a drinking problem, a fractured family, and even doing Odin's every single bid, even against his own family's wishes, especially his wife Sif.
You don't want her to have a sword.
But it's not about having a sword. It's about what you use it for. I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, you tell him, Sif. And we do have a couple of scraps here and there with Thor throughout God of War Ragnarok. Even fight alongside him as Atreus in the Muspelheim trials, at least at one point in the game. But onto Ragnarok and his battle with Jormungandr. So off to the side during the Battle of Ragnarok, you can actually see Thor taking on Jormungandr. But which Jormungandr? So the world serpent Thor is currently taking on during the Battle of Ragnarok is the new Jormungandr, all thanks to Atreus and Angrboda. A snake was found in the home of Gryla, actually Angrboda's grandmother in Jotunheim, and Atreus actually put a soul of a Jotun named Jormungandr into a snake, and it kind of just slithers off, grows, and this is the Jormungandr we see in Ragnarok. And the current Jormungandr, the one that we see in God of War 2018, actually does not want any part to do with Ragnarok and kind of just, I guess, f***s off. Now, the new Jormungandr will be hit so hard by Thor during the Battle of Ragnarok that it splinters the world tree and sends Jormungandr back in time to the Lake of Nine, where we first see him in 2018. And yes, that is a lot, but obviously didn't happen in mythology. But honestly, the time travel thing and the two Jormungandrs, I really like it, and I friggin' called it too. Video right here. Here. That one. But all in all, Thor did not kill Jormungandr during Ragnarok, and vice versa. Jormungandr didn't kill Thor, which obviously doesn't line up with mythology. Now let's talk more about Thor because he's still alive after the Jormungandr battle. So Kratos fights Thor, and it is a friggin' spectacle. Both fight completely all out for the sake of their families, and pretty much because Odin told Thor to do it. Kratos eventually gets the better of Thor and reasons with him for the better sake of his family. Thor finally realizes what Kratos has been telling him and starts to make good decisions for himself and his own family as well. So this is kind of where the unthinkable happens, and I did not see this coming. Thor began to go against Odin's wishes, and what did Odin do? Shoved his spear through his own son's heart.
No.
So Thor as a character was written and acted beautifully. Obviously this didn't happen in mythology, but I love Thor's character, and he has some of the best character arcs in the God of War series. Character arc. The arc. In the series, at least in my opinion. Next, let's talk about the manipulative ball we called Odin. He has spread so much hate, torture, death, just around the realms, and he's done so much stuff, but in this video, we're just going to stick to the Ragnarok battle. So Odin will eventually fight Kratos, Freya, and Atreus. So once again, this is another really awesome boss fight, and the player has to be ready for Odin. He has range attacks, he has melee attacks, and the player has to be ready with knowledge and abilities with all the weapons available to Kratos, just to take him down. Eventually, Odin's downfall has to come. Beaten, bloodied, and tired, Odin falls to his knees and continually says he will never stop his pursuit. So what happens? Atreus chants a Jotun spell and traps Odin's soul in one of the marbles that he has carrying with him. Not knowing what to do with Odin, Kratos, Freya, and Atreus kind of ponder a couple of ideas. Then Sindri walks in. Yeah, and he has other plans for Odin. Sindri walks in, grabs Odin's soul orb thing, and then smashes it into a million freaking pieces, which Odin does not move on to the afterlife, but cast into oblivion.
I don't need this to make me whole.
We stopped his madness. That's all that matters. That's what comes next.
Okay, do not feel bad for Odin. He got everything he deserved in that one moment. And basically none of this happened in mythology. Basically none of that. Like said before, he was supposed to die to the wolf Fenrir, and then Fenrir was supposed to be killed by Vidar in his magical boot. But this didn't happen at all in God of War. I don't even think Fenrir even made it to Ragnarok. I think he was just chilling in Jotunheim. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. So once again, this really didn't happen in myth, but why was Sindri so pissed off at Odin? Well, okay, Odin has done a lot to them, the dwarves and everything, and they helped build Mjolnir and gave it to the Aesir, and Thor killed a bunch of giants. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that went down, but the next section will kind of explain what kind of pushed Sindri over the edge. In this next section starts with Atreus' pursuit for the God of War Tyr. So, Atreus and Kratos find Tyr locked up in a prison in Svartalfheim. Kind of. So, they bring Tyr back home with them to Brock and Sindri's house. At least so they thought. And this Tyr really doesn't help out much. Doesn't have really good ideas, was never around during fights, and really passive and just not a lot of help at all. Eventually, Tyr kind of gets worked up and is ready to storm the walls of Asgard, as if he knows an entry to Asgard this entire time, which Brock one of my favorite characters. Love that guy. Doesn't sit too well with him. He's like, you've known this entire time? Like, why haven't you shared this with us? Like, where did this come from? And it just doesn't sit right with the guy. Tyr then stabs Brock directly in the chest, killing him. We then learn that Tyr, the captor that we see in Svartalfheim and bring him home with us, was just Odin in disguise the entire time, learning about our plots against the Asgardians. Odin then flees, leaving Brock dead and the rest in turmoil. This is what pushes Sindri over the edge. And obviously none of this happened in mythology, but round of applause, Sony Santa Monica. I did not see that coming. But after the Battle of Ragnarok and the conclusion kind of the game, so like the bonus content afterwards, Kratos and Freya will eventually travel to Niflheim, where they will find a prison guarded by a bunch of Einherjar, where the real Tyr resides. So in myth, Tyr actually battles Garm, kind of like we talked about earlier, the Helheim guard dog thingamaguy. But in God of War, Kratos and Atreus fight him in Helheim, so neither of them are kind of making it to Ragnarok, and this is kind of where this section ends. Yeah. So let's talk about the aftermath of Ragnarok. All of these gods that come back, such as Magni Modi and the god Balder, all work together to create a brand new world. Yeah, that didn't happen in God of War now, did it? I really wanted Balder to come back though. But I honestly like how the ending did happen. Instead of the gods Magni, Modi, Balder, among others, Kratos is the one in the mural that is said to put the realms back together. And I honestly really like this idea, and it's kind of a callback to God of War 1 in this scene right here.
And from that point forward, throughout the rest of time, whenever men rode forth to battle for good cause or for evil, they did so under the watchful eye of the man who had defeated a god. They were driven forward by Kratos, the mortal who had become the new God of War.
People revere Kratos, and not because he was a murderous kind of god killer in his past, but more of a rebuilder of a new world, one that's better than it was before. And obviously Atreus is going to go off on his own journey with Angrboda, and we're kind of going to see what's going to happen with that later on down the road. So slightly different from mythology, but kind of similar at the same time. We do have many gods creating a new world in mythology, but in God of War, it is Kratos, the builder. So what's your favorite difference between God of War and Norse mythology? And if I did not mention your favorite, tell me in the comments down below, and let's discuss it. Also, if you enjoyed your time here and you made it this far into the video, I super appreciate it, and I really appreciate the time you spent with me today. And if you did enjoy it, please hit the like button, helps out the video quite a bit, and think about subscribing. There's more content like this and a metric ton of other stuff as well. So with saying that, stay safe, good night, and happy gaming. Good night, everybody!